I'm just curious, how do you feel when you walk down the street and you make eye contact with people? Do you feel comfortable? Do you feel uncomfortable? Do you want to talk to them? Do you want to avoid eye contact?
A few weeks ago, we started this initiative, this project to find a current event or problem going on in Detroit. For the last few weeks, we've been keeping up to date with this new show called The Detroiters that poked at several little tidbits about the lifestyle of Detroit and what a true Detroiter is. And we went through several analysis prototypes of what this language of Detroit was. And we arrived at this notion that there's a right and wrong way to look at someone in Detroit. So we went through several prototypes of how we could address this language of Detroit, this language of seeing. Ultimately, this turned into how well do you feel like you belong in this space, essentially. By being looked at. When you look at someone, you have power over them. You give them a perception of how you actually view them. Do you stare down? Do you go on your phone, or are you the person to say hi or give a head nod, or it was really testing your character. If you get stared at, if you get looked at like that by someone of a different race or of a different gender, etc., how does that make you look as a person? So for the technological aspect of this project, we wanted to make sure that we could in fact track someone as they walk by. We found that the Xbox Connect was a very useful tool and a very helpful option, being that we could control the threshold of how far we wanted it to see and how much of it we actually could control. Connect has been on the back burner for such a long time, and we found some open code that we could manipulate, throw some imagery in, and it turned out to be very fluid. Also this duality where we make assumptions about people based on how they look from afar, where if they're across the street, they have a demeanor about them where you make a judgment and you assume they're someone who they're not. And until you approach these people, or until they approach you, there isn't that assumption isn't clarified until you get to know them, until you have a conversation or say hello or do the head nod. It's not clarified until you get personal.
Whether you're from here or not, you're aware of this current gentrification of making everything a little nicer looking for people who are not from here. This installation also touches on this fact of outsiders coming in. Do you belong, or should you belong? There's also this stigma, I guess you could say, about these newcomers and these new businesses, and that's not Detroit. What is Detroit? So there's definitely a stereotype attached to where you come from and how you look and the way you act, even just walking down the street. And people can pick up on that, whether they're looking you dead in the eye or whether you're across the street.
Another point that I wanted to make is that I personally know this person very well. He's a neighbor in my building, and we always talk about this notion that he gets judged all the time as well. Even people of his own race do the same thing, where they'll see him and don't even acknowledge that he's there. We chose to use happy images of him when you're closer, because the closer you approach him and the more you interact with him, and you see that he's not who he is from afar. He basically provides the perfect narrative about what we're trying to say, and that's ultimately why we used him. Basically, after this project, the hypothetical of where it could exist besides an exhibition would probably be areas that I think that we come from, because we have this perception of people in Detroit that got quickly changed by this project, and well, honestly, several times before this, but I think it would really impact suburban areas better than it would in Detroit, because I feel like in Detroit it's just something that is already part of the language, like we said before. It's just already something that exists. Is out of context in a place like CCS. It just doesn't seem like it would fit here. However, on a street or on a garage of a different area, in a suburban area, would be better fitting.
So
From Max, endures.
And there's, yeah,
Thank you.
deuces.